Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Planning Commission for the meeting of January 12th. If we can have a roll call and establishment of a quorum.
Commissioner Amadeo,
Here.
Commissioner Herr. Commissioner Herr, and I see her on the screen. Commissioner St. John,
Here.
Commissioner Walton,
Here.
Commissioner Woodson, I don't see him yet. And Commissioner Rana is absent for today.
Okay, so we have a quorum.
We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And now if we can have a moment of silence, does anyone want to lead us in the pledge? I don't see. Thank you. Commissioner St. John will lead us in the pledge after a moment of silence.
Okay. The pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner St. John. Next item is special announcements and communications from the floor. Do we have any commissioners first who have any announcements? And then I will go out to the public. I don't see any announcements. We have 2 attendees, so I'm opening this up to our attendees. If either of you have any special announcements or anything not on the agenda you wish to address tonight, please raise your hand to be recognized. And I don't see hands being raised, so we will close that item and move on. The next item is ex parte communication disclosures. So if you have spoken to anyone about items on the agenda, seeking information, seeking input, other than staff members, you're always welcome to do that without having to declare your conversation. But if you've spoken to an applicant or to members of the public on any one of the items, now is your opportunity to disclose. And I don't see anyone raising their hands, so we will move on. First is an informational item. That's a presentation by the Community Development Department of the modified web page. So Guido, is that you?
Yeah, we're gonna punt on that for either one meeting or 2.
Okay.
So we'll just push that one forward. There's no public hearing, so you don't need to make a motion. So.
Okay, so then we will move on to the consent agenda, which is the action minutes from the last Planning Commission meeting. If you have any questions, you can ask those now. And I'm not seeing any. And if the public has any questions, I think Glenn Woodson would like to be promoted. I see he's in the public.
Great. Let me do that right now.
Thank you.
And he's in.
Okay. Glenn, did you have anything regarding the minutes that you wanted to speak to? And there we go. So Commissioner Woodson, did you have anything in the minutes you wanted to speak to?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, so if I can have a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as documented.
Thank you. And do I have a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, so the motion was made by Commissioner Woodson and seconded by Commissioner St. John. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. If we can move on now to, we have 3 public hearings. The first one, public hearing A, consider adopting a resolution of the Planning Commission approving a use permit allowing an existing permitted dispensary, that's element 7, to operate a cannabis distribution facility at its current location, 234 Reservation Road. The proposed project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to section 15301 of the California Code of Regulations, existing facilities, presented by contract planner Alec Barton. Alec.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo. I'll go ahead and share my screen. So what we have before you tonight is a cannabis distribution permit for element 7 located at 234 Reservation Road. The proposal is a use permit that will allow distribution of cannabis from the existing 5,018 square foot facility on Reservation Road. The use would function in tandem with the existing dispensary at that location. And so it wouldn't involve the construction of any new space or the addition to the building. It would use existing space within the building. I do want to add that the permit would only allow distribution, not manufacturing. So there would be packaging and filling taking place at this site, but there would be no extraction, processing, or cooking occurring within the building. And then I'll just make note as well that there's no citywide cap on the number of distribution permits identified in our ordinance. The dispensary permits, of which element 7 currently has 1, is limited to 3, but there's no cap on the number of distribution permits. Here is an image of the existing and proposed site plan. I'm going to zoom in on the building in just a moment so you can get a better sense of that, but the building is set back from Reservation Road at the rear of the parcel. And this location highlighted in red on the south side of the building is where the distribution facility would be located. This blue area is the loading zone. The project is compliant with the municipal code and the zoning ordinance. It would be located in a C1 retail business zone. This is a conditionally permitted use in that zone. The applicant has prepared a distribution operations plan to show how the use would be in compliance with state law and local ordinances regarding cannabis distribution facilities. And staff requested an operational letter amendment that clarifies a few key points on this use. Among those points are that the dispensary would have deliveries occur during regular business hours. And as I stated earlier, the distribution involves packaging and filling and no other activities that would be associated with a manufacturing use. The Exhibit A to your staff report includes 22 conditions of approval. I won't go over all of those, but I do want to hit some of the key points. The project needs to be consistent with the existing conditions of approval for the dispensary located on the same site. There's a number of conditions related to security and reporting measures and what the applicant needs to do in the event of a lapse in security. There's also regulations that odor cannot be detected outside of the building. And then the clarification that separate permits would be required if the applicant were to look at signage, additional or replacement signage at this site, or mobile food vending. The action is exempt from CEQA, and the recommendation of staff would be that the Planning Commission approve this project as it is consistent with the municipal code, and the applicant has demonstrated how it would be consistent through the distribution operations plan. I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Wonderful.
I also believe that Amber and maybe Josh from Element 7 are here as well to answer questions.
Okay. I only see Amber here, but
Yes, good evening.
Hi. So, so to the commissioners, any commissioners who have questions about this item, now's the time to raise your hand. Your virtual hand. Okay, Commissioner St. John.
Let me find my unmute. Okay. See where to start. Just one or two comments on the background. It was for filling, packaging, and shipment, and absolutely no manufacturing. So the shipment is basically the delivery by vehicle to qualified customers.
Actually, our distribution will be actually moving a good amount of products from our location to neighboring licensed facilities. So other operators that are operating within a certain mileage, we would be able to move cannabis products to those other facilities via our distribution license. So
Okay.
it's not a delivery license.
Understand. Let me see. On the permit, the use permit, it specifies that it is for limited to packaging and filling. And then it also says that it does not allow manufacturing activities, including extraction, processing, and cooking. Are those the only three manufacturing activities, or just an example of the manufacturing activities that you can't do?
That's pretty much what you can do. But what we say when we're not filling or processing, what we do is we buy finished product from another licensed facility, and we have our own brands. Element 7 has 7 brands. So what we do is we buy cannabis product, cannabis flower, or cannabis oils. We put them into our cartridges, our vapes, and our baggages, and that's what we sell at our dispensaries, like in Marina, for example. So when we say manufacturing, that's a totally different license that involves extraction, either CO2 extraction or non-ethanol extractions. That's a license that we don't have, and we have no interest in manufacturing. We buy finished product and we put it in our bags with our label on it.
So filling, that activity is basically breaking down a bulk package into smaller.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we usually sell a lot of eighths. So we buy maybe 25 pounds of a certain strain. We'll break that down into eighths and put it into our packaging for our brands.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is not a typical use permit. It might be helpful if the commission's open to it, to letting Amber give a
brief
overview.
presentation.
Yeah, just so that, because it's a kind of a unique use permit. We don't deal with cannabis stuff.
And if you're not used to distribution
right
type of business, if you're not familiar with it, yes, I understand. It took me a while. My husband was in distribution at one time of various different kinds of products. So I had a little bit of background, but I think that would be helpful. So Amber, if you'd like to do that, and then we'll let Commissioner St. John continue to ask his questions.
Yeah, that'll be very helpful.
Yes.
Sure. I could get really granular with it, but overall, in a nutshell, you need a distribution license to transport cannabis and cannabis products throughout California. So think of it as an Amazon Prime. You have orders that are coming from, and the orders will be coming from licensed cultivators, licensed manufacturers, licensed testing operators sometimes. And what we do is we will go and pick up these bulk orders and distribute them to the area that they need to distribute to. So like Prime picks up packages at a warehouse and then moves those packages to another facility where, the Amazon drivers take the truck, they put them on their Sprinter vans, and they deliver the package, to that mailbox. Okay, Element 7 would do that just as on a bigger scale, like the Amazon Prime, the big rig trucks. So basically, you move cannabis throughout California via a distribution license. Everybody that moves cannabis legally through California has to have a partner with a distributor. And so distributor licenses out here are, I think there's probably like 427 maybe distributor license, and certain distributors handle certain areas. So for ours, we have like California, you'll have Central California, you'll have Southern California, which will allow us to move cannabis products for other licensed cannabis businesses on overall, like a UPS or FedEx. So basically that's what a distribution license does. So our area for distribution, because we have a distribution in Fireball, and so we function within like a 50-mile radius of Fireball. So our marina, we would like to go to like Salinas and neighboring cities that are already operating, have cannabis businesses out there. And on the other side, also a distribution license allows you to package, fill your own products or products for other licensed, facilities. If they don't have a distribution license, say there's an operator who's like a retailer and they want to get into selling their own products, so they can partner with a company like Element 7 for us to fill the bags, us to purchase the product, buy the product, fill the bags in their packaging, and then we would then distribute them back to that retailer via the distribution license. Does that make any sense? I know that was a lot.
Commissioner St. John, did that help?
Yeah, that's quite helpful, but I still have a couple of several other comments or clarifications.
Clarifications? We can make comments after we've all had the opportunity to ask questions, but if you have other questions,
Yeah, other
now's the
questions.
time to do that. Okay.
Right. Okay. So for under one of the sections was lighting, exterior lighting plan. Is there any proposed changes to the exterior lighting of your existing leasehold?
No,
Okay.
there's not.
So state licenses, just a confirmation that Element 7 has the unexpired licenses for both the dispensary and distribution?
For the dispensary, we have our license. But since we're in this phase with the city right now, we have to have your approval first before we can apply for our state license, which our licensing director already has our application basically filled out. But if we receive approval from the commission, then we take that letter that Alex will send over to us, and we send that over to the Department of Cannabis Control, who issues our state license. We have a really good relationship with the DCC since we've done so much, licensing with them. Our turnaround time, I mean, is roughly maybe 3 weeks to 4 weeks before we receive our state license.
That's good. Another question about signage on your site on this location. Are you going to have new signage?
No, we're not.
Or just the existing?
Just the existing signage.
Okay. Another question on your security guards and cameras.
Mhm.
The last sentence on this, these 22, forgot what they're called,
Findings.
criteria, is that the security personnel may not be armed. Is that in California, is there concealed carry permits?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, for citizens, whether they be security guards or not, and why specifically would security personnel be unarmed for this kind of enterprise?
That's a good question. So certain cities would, in their ordinance, they carve out whether security guards should be armed or unarmed. And then the state follows what the local municipality says. So in Lemon Grove, our security guards are allowed to be armed. So they will be armed. In Marina, our security guards are not armed. So we have a few
As
security
a-
guards who have.
And that would be the unarmed is a position from the city saying that thou shalt not be armed.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, then the next thing is the next item, number 19, was that you would have a notification. I'm wondering, why will you have a 24/7 alarm that automatically goes to the Marina Police in the event of a emergency?
I know some of our locations have allow for the police department to have access to our cameras and our contact for our security company. So with this case, we have a security company who monitors our facility 24/7. And if we receive an alarm that warrants the Marina Police to be called out, they will see a call from our security company. So there's not a direct button or email we send that we send like security from our Marina location. Our security company is in charge of dispatching that to the local police department.
Yeah, it says here that it has to be within 24 hours, but if there's a problem, I would think 24 minutes is too long.
Right. No, absolutely. Because we have a lot of, we thank goodness we've had good, we haven't had any problems at our location, but we put 24 hours just to give us a cushion, because that was prior to us signing our contract with our current security company that we use at our facilities. So now the company that we have now monitors 24/7. And if there is any issue that warrants the police, they'll definitely call Marina Police Department.
Okay. Let's see. Just a couple of more.
Sure.
This was your document. I guess it's your document, Appendix B, anyway, let's see, the operations plan. Yeah, it says under one of, let me see what section it is, transportation procedures. At a minimum, element 7 will have a vehicle alarm system on all transport vehicles and trailers, motion detectors, pressure switches, duress, panics, several things. Hold up alarms may also be used. Is there a problem in defining or saying that shall be used? All those features seem very appropriate.
Right. Yes. At that time that we submitted that portion of the application, there were several companies that offered several different systems, alarm systems, protection systems. And so now we found a company that offers 4 of those things all in one. So that would be the company that we would go with. We want to be the most secure, cannabis company out there. There's a lot going on out here, and we want to make sure like the city is safe and our facility is safe and our customers are safe, our employees are safe. So we don't cut corners on anything security related.
Okay. Several places it says, like another dot, it says element 7 will only travel between this. Then the next one says employee transporting cannabis goods will only travel between. What's the difference between a designation of element 7 will or won't and an employee will or won't?
There's not, because there would be an element 7 employee who is doing the distribution.
Okay, so yeah, that was a little confusing to single out element 7 in some cases, followed by, and the next case would be only employee.
Yeah, sorry.
Element 7
and I actually wrote that.
quite synonymous then.
Yes.
Okay, another thing I was a little confused by, a question, it says, like vehicles and trailers transporting the goods are subject to inspection by the Bureau. Now, is there a special bureau?
The Bureau, when we submitted this application, it was considered called the Bureau of Cannabis Control. Now it's called the Department of Cannabis Control. So they're in charge of running all of the state licensed operators in California, and they conduct their own audits. So if we have a distribution vehicle, they can pop up at any.
So you can update this one to be the current.
Yes, it's the Department of
authority.
Cannabis Control. Yes, instead of the Bureau.
Yeah. Okay. Under transport personnel requirements,
Mhm.
only employees of Element 7 and/or security personnel will be in a vehicle while transporting cannabis. So, like the driver will be an employee of Element 7, not a contract. There's sometimes a difference between contract personnel and fully card-carrying employees.
Yes, our driver would be an employee of Element 7.
So basically,
The only
you're
thing we
looking at
contract out is for
contract
security.
personnel then.
Right.
Okay, that's good. Let's see. Oh, yeah, this one. It says that if Element 7 has access to the track and trace system, I guess this is it's my understanding. I did just a little, didn't understand what track and trace was, so I Googled it. And it says that California mandates that statewide licenses use the California Cannabis Track and Trace CCTT system.
Mhm.
But I guess you have to get your license first, but then
Right.
will you then join or get the license for track and trace?
Well, we have the license for track. It's actually called Metric, is our track and trace system that California uses, and that records every movement that cannabis makes from genetics, from its genetics to its trims to the final product. This system tracks, and all of our stores are connected, and all of our platforms are connected directly to Metric. And if there's any errors or issues, we are alerted like within an hour or at the end of the day. If anything needs to be resolved, thank goodness at our Marina location, we haven't had those issues. But that's what the track and trace system is. It's a Metric, and we are connected to Metric.
Okay.
And if the council wants to see or come to our site and take a look at, just for your own knowledge, we welcome you come.
Anyway, that's all the questions I have, and I appreciate. Thank you very much for
You're welcome.
Updating me.
No problem. Please stop by also.
Okay.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have any questions? And looking because Commissioner Walton, you did have your hand up, but you put it down. So I'm assuming your questions were answered.
That's correct.
Okay. If commissioners don't have any questions, I'm going to go out to the public and open a public hearing and see if any member of the public would like to speak to this issue. We only have one public member there. So, Mr. Markham, if you would like to speak to this issue, would you raise your hand? And he has not raised his hand, so we'll close the public hearing. Now's the appropriate time for discussion. So, commissioners, please raise your hand if you have anything you'd like to add to the discussion. And Commissioner Walton.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Commissioner. Ms. Norwood, that was a great presentation. Thank you so very much for giving us the extra additional information. This project looks really good, and I'm very excited to see it moving forward. I think that you've been working toward this for quite some time, and
Yes.
see it in front of us this evening is exciting and wonderful. Thank you so very much for bringing this distribution to Marina.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank Alex for hanging in there with us this entire time. I know we haven't been the most easiest to deal with, but here we are. So thank you, Alex.
Any other commissioners? I don't see any. I only have one comment. The question I had got answered through the questions that Commissioner St. John had. But my question had been, is this a silo type of operation, or is it distribution to any other cannabis dispensary or adult use? And it sounds like it's for any other. They're going to place orders with you and you handle the distribution of the product. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I got out of it. So I appreciate that. I was concerned. I used to be on the Public Safety Commission for the League of California Cities. And that, one of the things that was discussed was trying to avoid silos. And it in my mind, it created a safer product when one organization wasn't doing everything for their particular product. It could be tested by one organization, distributed by another, and sold by another. And I preferred that. So I'm glad to see that that's what this is. So if we can, Commissioner Walton, your hand is up. Did you have more, or are you done?
My apologies.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Sometimes one question leads to another, or a moment of silence and you think about something else. So that's perfectly all right. Okay, so if we can have a motion and just an FYI, I appreciate this. I don't usually get a hard copy, but under recommendation on the front page of each item, it actually gives you, if you're not going to change anything, it gives you the motion. So it makes it really easy. You don't have to formulate it yourself. It's right there on the front page of each item. So if I can have a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion.
All right.
Okay. I move to adopt resolution number 2023, approving the use permit UP 2023-01, allowing Element 7 to operate a cannabis distribution facility at 234 Reservation Road, subject to findings, conditions of approval, and a Class 1 CEQA categorical exemption.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Herr. So we have a motion by Commissioner St. John, seconded by Commissioner Herr. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
One second. Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson.
Yes.
Motion passes, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We're going to move on to B, and I need to get to B. And I think I can't find it. There it is. I'm losing papers all over the floor, but now I have found it. Okay, so item 8E is open a public hearing. I'm hearing something in the background. Open a public hearing and take public testimony and consider adopting a resolution of the Planning Commission recommending that the City Council adopt changes to section 17.46 parentheses signs of the Marina Municipal Code. The proposed amendments are exempt from CEQA per section 15061 B3. And I'm looking to see who's presenting this.
Alan's going to present, but I'm just going to give some introductory remarks.
Okay, very good.
So I've been with the city about a year. I have about a 3-page memo that I'm going to share with the commission at the next meeting of things that I've seen in the code that we really need to work on to make it either more customer friendly or user friendly for staff or make it consistent with state law. And so updating the sign ordinance is part of that whole initiative that Alec is helping me with. So that is the context for what we're moving forward. So I'll pass it off to Alec. So
Great.
Thank you, Chair Amadeo, and thank you, Guido. I'll just mention as we dive into this presentation that the proposed amendments to the sign ordinance that you see before you would accomplish all three of those changes that Guido mentioned. So we'd be looking at more user-friendly updates for the public to see in the sign ordinance, a better customer experience when applying for sign permits, and then also some necessary changes that would bring the ordinance into compliance with state law. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So as I mentioned, there are three reasons why these amendments to the sign ordinance are necessary. The first and probably most important is that there is still language in the sign ordinance that relates to religious and political viewpoints. This is clearly inconsistent with RLUPA, the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, and is not legally defensible. So it puts the city at risk of a lawsuit that the city would surely lose if that were to be brought forth. Another important reason is that making staff the review authority for compliance signs will save applicants time and money. It will make for a better customer experience and will free up staff and the Planning Commission to work on other projects. And then a third reason is that there's general ordinance cleanup that will improve the customer experience with the ordinance. I'm going to walk you through some of the highlights of the proposed amendments. The main thing that we wanted to accomplish with this update to the sign ordinance is to change the review structure for signs. So we have 3 tiers of signs. At the bottom would be exempt signs that don't require any kind of permit or any type of review, either from staff or a review authority. The next tier would be compliant signs that would require an administrative sign permit. If a sign is compliant with the ordinance, then it gets reviewed by the community development director or staff, and it doesn't have to go to a review authority for approval. And then the third tier would be non-compliant signs. If an applicant wanted to do something that was above and beyond what's in the ordinance, that could be allowed, but it would need to go to either the design review board or the planning commission for approval, since it is not compliant with the municipal code. One of the things we wanted to do was, to the extent possible, group the regulations that the existing sign ordinance has for commercial and residential uses, and put those into a table so that it's more easily understandable. And I know looking at this table, it probably doesn't seem very legible, but the idea here, and this material isn't changed. I'll just mention that at all from the current sign ordinance. It just puts it in an easier format. So right now the sign ordinance allows you to have 1.5 square feet of signage for every foot of primary business frontage. A business can only have one of those, and the ordinance is pretty clear on how that's defined. And then you get an additional 0.5 square foot for every foot of each secondary business frontage. The number of signs that are allowed is not changed. That's in the existing ordinance. The columns and rows below that, so the height for monument signs, and then the height and sign area that's allowed for shopping center and industrial park monument signs. That actually comes from a document called the Design Guidelines and Standards that was adopted by the council back in 2001. We want to bring all of those regulations into the sign ordinance so that staff doesn't have to go to 2 separate documents when we're reviewing signs. That's pretty standard practice. It will make it easier for staff to review applications, and it will make it easier for customers to know where to go so that their applications can be compliant with the ordinance. And then again, for residential uses, this content isn't changed. It's what's already in the existing ordinance. It's just in table format to make it easier to use. A few other notable updates, as I mentioned, the regulations within the design guidelines and standards are being brought into the municipal code, so that we aren't going two places for regulations. The two major issues there is the height of monument signs that you saw in that commercial table. There's also a bit of information in there about the background color for cabinet signs needing to be opaque so that it doesn't create glare issues. And so we've brought that into the municipal code as well. There's a list of some definitions that we've updated or added based on what was in the current ordinance. And then to the extent possible, we've shifted the basis for regulating signs from there's some language that wasn't content neutral. We've worked to make that language content neutral so that regulation is based on location, materials, size, other things that won't be challenged in court, and then just some general ordinance cleanup as well. I'll just give as one example here. There was a section in the sign ordinance that talked about signs that could be on the pedestrian overpass above Del Monte Boulevard. And of course, that hasn't been there for some time. So this action is also exempt from CEQA because it's not proposing any new facilities. It would just be an update to an existing ordinance. Staff would recommend that the council adopt these amendments, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Okay, so again, we're going to ask commissioners if you have any questions regarding this item. Please raise your hand. Wow. Oh, there we go. Commissioner St. John.
Let me just be very brief. I think it's like the next to last page under signs and otherwise regulations for temporary signs. That section, there, subsection 6, time limitations. Basically, it says it's limited, posted for not more than 60 days prior to an event to which they pertain. That's item 6. Item 9 specifically is for signs in the R1 district. That would be residential 1, like single family homes. Wouldn't for sale signs or for rent signs for single family residences be temporary signs and not have to get any approval to, as long as it's less than so many square feet? And there wouldn't be a time limitation of 60 days because, you know, in the current situation of selling your property, it could easily take 4 or 5 months. So can you clarify how to get around the 60-day time limitation for a temporary residential for sale or for lease sign?
Thank you, Commissioner St. John. That's an excellent question. I'll just add here that both of the sign types that you've mentioned would be considered exempt signs. They wouldn't require review from staff or from a review authority. So there wouldn't be a review component to those signs. The intent with the time limitation is that frequently there will be signs that are placed advertising some type of an event, maybe a seasonal event or otherwise. And it's pretty common for a municipality to have some type of restriction on how long before that event a sign can go up so that it's not up, you know, all year or for an extended portion of the year. A for sale sign is not going to trigger any kind of issues for staff and likely wouldn't trigger you know, issues within the community. But if somebody had a concern with how long a sign had been up, they could always refer to that to the code enforcement department.
Okay, I'm okay with it. Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, Commissioner St. John?
No, I'm clear on it. I'm
Okay. So any other commissioners with questions?
Mine is more related to background info because in the report it says local coastal program. Could you explain to me exactly what this is?
Thank you, Commissioner Herr. Yes, that's an existing provision in the sign ordinance. We've simply moved it under general provisions so that it's sort of a more logical placement for that section. Basically, what it's saying is that any sign that was to be located within the coastal zone has an additional set of requirements that it has to meet before a sign could be located there. And so the city has an adopted local coastal program for areas of the city that are within the coastal zone. And those additional provisions would need to apply to any signs that are placed within the coastal zone.
Yeah, and then Alec, I know Allison has quite a bit of coastal, so maybe you could explain maybe how that plays out in terms of coastal areas and signage and all that. If don't want to put you on the spot, but.
Sure. Thanks, Guido. Yeah, it really just is in there to alert that there are specific rules that apply for development within the coastal zone. So this section in our zoning code, which does not apply the same way in the coastal zone. This is just an alert to say that, you know, if you have a development that you need to include signage for that's in the coastal zone, you need to also check the requirements of our local coastal program.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? I don't see any more questions, so I'm going to go out again to the public. I'm going to open a public hearing. Is this public hearing? Yes, this is public hearing. We only have one person. So Jeff, if you'd like to speak to this issue, you can raise your hand and be recognized. And not raising his hand. So we close the public hearing and come back to the commission. Any discussion from commissioners? And I'm looking to see if anybody wants to talk, and I'm not seeing anybody. So I would entertain a motion. And again, that's going to be on the first page of your staff report. And I'm looking for the first page of my staff report, which I've lost. Here.
I'll make the motion.
Pardon me?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mhm. I move to adopt PC or Planning Commission Resolution 2023. Am I reading the right one? There's no numbers behind 2023 underscore.
That's, yeah.
Yeah,
I think that you're at the right one.
Am I
I'm
reading it
looking to
correctly?
make sure because I have tossed papers all over the place because I dropped them.
Yes, through the chair, we leave that little hyphen blank until
Okay.
this is done, and then we'll add the
That's what she's
proper
talking about
resolution
then.
number
Okay.
to it. So it
Is
is
that
correct
today's
that
date?
it's blank.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
So this is today's date, 2023, January 12th.
No, it hasn't passed yet. So right now it's still just 2023. They
Gotcha.
will fill it
Okay,
in when it's passed.
Right.
awesome.
There
Thank
we
you. This is truly a learning experience. I appreciate it.
Yes, it is.
I move to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2023, recommending that the City Council adopt the proposed amendments to Section 17.46. Is this not hyphen bracketed signs of the Marina Municipal Code? The action is exempt from CEQA per Section 1506(1)(b)(3) of the CEQA guidelines.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Commissioner Herr seconds. So we have a motion by Commissioner Walton. Is that correct? and seconded by Commissioner Herr. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Sure. Let me pull up. Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes,
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. And we will move on to 8C. And that is consider modifications to Title 17 zoning code of the Marina Municipal Code to determine what design review permit must be reviewed at a public hearing or administratively by city staff. The proposed project is exempt from CEQA pursuant to Section 15301B3 of the California Environmental Quality Act CEQA guidelines. So do we have a staff report?
Yes, hi, everybody. Christy Hopper, I'm the Planning Services Manager. Just a quick announcement. This is my last time in front of you. Tomorrow is my last day at the city. So I'm actually really excited to be able to present this. It's been a long time coming. And so with that, let's go ahead and I'll share my screen. And never figured out how to have this come up automatically. So tonight we're going to be talking about design review thresholds, kind of similar to what Alec was mentioning and looking at the sign ordinance updates. This is also a part of the ongoing effort to update and improve the zoning ordinance. And in this case, it's streamlining the design review process. So we have a couple of different objectives, and that would be to clearly define the permit process, similar to the sign ordinance, and that would be the staff or administrative versus planning commission approval, design review board, and then planning commission approval. We're also doing some general ordinance cleanup, and part of that is going to be to provide clear findings for approval of your applications. So this is going to be a two-part review process for the Planning Commission and then ultimately City Council. So today, what we're asking the Planning Commission to do is to review a draft list of projects that may be eligible for staff and or Planning Commission approval. And we're looking for you to provide direction to staff as to whether or not we need to add projects, modify projects. So we'll go through that list in just a minute. And then at a future meeting, the Planning Commission would then review those revisions that we would bring back, and also revisions to the design review ordinance, and that's chapter 17.56 of our municipal code. And then, like I said, incorporate those revisions from this meeting and or other meetings, depending upon if we need to have another meeting to talk about those thresholds. So municipal code section 17.56 requires that most design review applications be approved by the Site and Architectural Design Review Board, which is a referral to the Planning Commission. And Planning Commission is the ultimate approval body. There is really no clear direction in our code when applications can be approved administratively. The code also, in a very, very long paragraph, and I do have that, we can go over it if you want. It in general requires design review for all development, and that would be new construction, additions, modifications, color and material changes, landscaping, all of that, except for single family dwellings. There is a caveat about single family dwellings. If you have a single family dwelling that basically has a double frontage lot, which means that it fronts two or more non-intersecting public streets, then it does require a design review application. So the code kind of attempts to address the process for changes to previously approved plans. We'll go through that. So in this section of the municipal code, it talks about the Planning Commission approval process, and they act upon site and architectural design approval. And then it goes on, it says all improvements which have received site and architectural design approval shall be constructed substantially in accordance with approved plans. and no change shall be made subsequently without the review and approval of the planning director. So this has been a challenge because we said, okay, well, you know, what is change, and is something minor, is it not? And so in summary, the administrative review only allowed for projects that have had previously obtained design review. There is a challenge with this because many buildings or sites are much older and they predate even incorporation of the city in 1975. Previous design review is not available. Maybe it wasn't ever transferred from the county. Maybe it never had design review. So the term change is really vague and can be subjectively interpreted. So in response to that, the 2001 and then edited in 2004, the citywide design standards and guidelines tried to provide additional guidance for what projects could be eligible for administrative review. So I'll go through the existing process. So staff evaluation, this is our evaluation. Projects that are not eligible for admin review. So their process is they are reviewed by the Site and Architectural Design Review Board. Currently, the Design Review Board is on hold, and it has been through COVID. And there's still a question whether or not the Design Review Board would be reinstated. It is a committee of the Planning Commission, and it would be so. Sorry, reviewed by. No, it's not staff. I'm sorry. That would be that's a mistake. It would be approved by the Planning Commission, not staff. I'll need to update that. So it includes projects as minor as a small addition or even painting of a building if there's no previous design review. This is very significant because if a project is not eligible for staff level or administrative review, the application fee is $7,775 per application. And we've seen many instances where the cost of the application actually may be more, and that should be more than the cost of the project. We're probably going to go out and change those. So in essence, when you look at it, it's pretty expensive to go through design review because of the two-part process. So for admin review projects, back when the city adopted a new fee schedule, we did add two different fees for a major and minor administrative design review in anticipation of this update to the code. So if you come in for a major admin design review, it's a little over $1,000. Minor, say a repainting of a building, minor landscape changes, things like that, would be $340. So many applicants currently are unable to enjoy those lower fees. Many projects currently are just not eligible for admin design review. There are also new state laws, as Alec mentioned, under the sign ordinance. In this case, they impact the design review process. In general, it's going to be for residential development applications, and that can be strictly 100% residential or also mixed use projects. And they may only be acted upon using objective design standards. And those objective standards would require no interpretation or personal judgment. So they have to be measurable and verifiable. Subjective standards are subject to interpretation, and those are not measurable and verifiable. The city is currently working with the consultants to develop objective design standards. So that is in process right now. We're anticipating adoption in late 2023. But in the meantime, we are still required as a city to abide by these strict streamlining timelines for housing development projects. So clarification of projects that could go through staff review versus a DRB Planning Commission review would assist with the city's compliance with state law. The proposed design review process, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission further all the past efforts to define the process. And that would be allowing staff to review and approve projects. By allowing that staff to approve projects, it would save applicants time and money and also allow Planning Commission to focus on larger permits and policy issues. So in essence, the going to planning commission or going to a public hearing would be the exception rather than the rule. So we'll go through these. We can always go back. So we've divided up the types of development projects into residential construction activities and non-residential construction activities. And the idea behind this is looking at if we have a project. So for example, a new multifamily, an apartment complex or an addition or something like that, what are the potential impacts that a project could have on the community, on the neighborhood as a whole? And that's when we look at that whole, does it rise to the level of getting the public involved and getting the planning commission involved? There will be very strict objective design standards that staff would have to go by in order to approve some of these projects. In the event that a project does not comply with objective design standards and they want exceptions to that, then we would be going up to the planning commission for review. It could be as a, you know, especially if there's multiple entitlements. So let's go through these really quickly. So for residential new construction, staff is recommending that if there's an existing apartment building and they want to add new multifamily units that are under 1,000 square feet, staff is recommending that would be a director or staff level decision, and then upon appeal it would go to the planning commission. When you go above 1,000 square feet, because of any potential impacts it could have on adjacent properties or the neighborhoods in general, it would go through the process we have now, the design review board recommendation to planning commission for decision, and then council on appeal. Accessory structures are always an issue. Somebody wants to build a shed or something like that. And so staff's recommending for accessory structures that are 500 square feet and under would be a staff level review, and anything over that would go through the normal design review public hearing process. Oops. Accessory structures over 12 feet in height. So in our code, accessory structures are in general 8 feet. And then as you start to go over 8 feet, there's a requirement for design review for accessory structures that go up to 12 feet in height. And that would currently have to go through the design review process and go to the design review board and planning commission. Staff's recommending that with the standards that we currently have in the code, that it could be eligible for staff level review. So that is a change. Residential additions then would be under or 1,000 square feet and under would be staff level, and then over 1,000 square feet would go through the public hearing process. So other residential construction or improvements, sometimes there would be, say, an existing apartment complex and they're doing a major just exterior remodel. And so that would be defined in lineal feet. So if you would have facade or exterior improvements that 1,000 lineal feet or under, it would be staff level, and over that would go through public hearing process. New or modified landscaping, staff is recommending that would be reviewed at a staff level. And then any project that has multiple entitlements, and this occurs frequently for new construction, larger projects that may require a use permit variance. Sometimes they're, having to do lot line adjustments and things like that. If you have multiple entitlements, that would go through a public hearing process. So for non-residential, it's fairly similar to the residential. Accessory structures, similarly, if the 500 square feet or under would be at a staff level, and over that would go through public hearing. Accessory structures over 12 feet in height, somebody wants to build a garage on a commercial property, would be staff level. And then additions or new construction that is less than 100,000 square feet or less would be staff level. And it looks like one was cut off. If it's over, if it's new construction over 1,000 square feet, would go to public hearing. And then it's this similarly to what we talked about with facade or exterior improvements, would be that two-part process, either staff or planning commission. New or modified landscaping would stay with staff as well, and multiple entitlements would go through public hearing. So the next steps, what staff is asking is that we would get comments from the planning commission and the public and refine the table of projects. And then we would return to the planning commission with a draft ordinance. And that would be to amend municipal code section 17.56, site and architectural design review, with findings with sort of a reformatting, as well as this process, the new design review process. So that ends my presentation, and I am available for questions.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, so, and I already see a hand raised. Commissioner Walton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Christy, I'm really sorry. Thank you. First, thank you. That was an awesome last presentation, and sad face, that was the last presentation. I'm gonna miss you a lot, and I hope to still have you somewhere in my life somewhere. So before I get weepy, what was my question?
If you don't remember what your question is, you can put your hand down and then put it back up when you remember.
I got it. It's real quick. Do we have an idea of when the design review board will be brought back into recommissioned, if you will?
I'll defer to the community development director on that.
Yeah, so when we went in August to council to talk about the tree committee, which you guys are going to touch on next, DRB and the Public Works Commission, my original recommendation was to disband the committee because I felt like with objective standards and just trying to streamline things for customers, the commission directed us not, the council directed us not to do that. They said, bring back the tree committee, bring back the Public Works Commission, and then they directed the city manager and myself to, at another time, assess whether the DRB would be brought back. And so Christy is being very smart, and we're trying to be politically savvy to, we don't want to touch that in the ordinance yet because we haven't been given that direction from council. And so that was the conversation Christy and I had, like, it would be presumptuous of staff to say, no, this has to go to commissioner staff. So for now, she's writing, or the recommendation is keep it for now. When we get further direction from the council, then we'll have to go back and change it. So that's the whole background. So
Thank you.
Any other questions from you, Commissioner Walton? No. Okay. Commissioner St. John.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Just a few, I guess I'm kind of being a little bit of a pain tonight, but that's part of the job. Just a few things on the table. The table is very, very well done, very well laid out. But I would ask that you start with residential new construction, then the next line down is new multifamily units, and you go from there. But you skip the single family units. There's no line for that for a new construction single family home. And so even though I think that those are covered under another paragraph, that the review level is decision by the director, and planning commission is the appeal. Is that correct?
So currently, single family dwellings do not require design review at all, which is the reason that they're not in the table.
Ah,
The current code says if it's a single family dwelling that fronts the two non-intersecting streets, it does require design review. Staff's recommendation is that be removed. It doesn't really make any sense.
right. Yeah, I agree.
If we have clear standards for how a single family dwelling should be built, it really shouldn't. It should go the way that other single family homes do. So that's the reason that single family dwellings are not included.
Okay. Why, jump to the next point, would be the breakout of an accessory structure or an accessory, probably an ADU, over 12 feet in height. You make an exception for that, and then put it, if it's over 12 feet in height, then it's at the lowest level of review.
Mm-hmm.
But so like if it was 40 feet in height, that's over 12 feet.
Mhm.
I would think we're getting into some serious design that maybe an approval for something that, so where did 12 feet, is it 12 feet but less than 20? And then maybe if it goes up to 20 feet, we go back to a design review board?
Right, thank you. That's a great question. I'm glad you picked up on that. So at a staff level, we were talking about that, and that exact question came up. So what's in here is what our current code says: accessory structures over 12 feet in height, and that's it. We did talk about, do we want to put a 12 to 16 feet is staff level, and over that would go. We wanted to bring that up and talk to the planning commission about that. We specifically didn't put that threshold in. So I think that's something we should talk about tonight. What is going to be that threshold for accessory structures? I will mention that ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are exempt from design review. They are, they go through a ministerial process, which means we have no discretion. But accessory structures not for habitation, a shed or a workshop or something like that, that's what an accessory structure would be. So, or anything that basically has a roof but is non-habitable.
Mhm.
So that is something that we should definitely talk about tonight. What should be the threshold? What does the planning commission feel that is acceptable for staff? And if somebody comes in with a 30-foot accessory structure, should the planning commission review it? So I'm going to make a note of that we need to talk about it.
Okay, now let's put that one on a to-do list. The next
Okay.
thing is this residential additions. No, I'm sorry. Other residential construction or improvements, facade or exterior. You talk about 1,000 linear feet or less, and then 1,001 or over 1,000 linear feet. What is the linear feet? Is that like the perimeter of a building?
That would be the perimeter of a
You
building.
would add up the length and the width and et cetera.
Yeah,
that's
and
the linear feet that we're talking about.
yeah, and it's somewhat arbitrary, to be honest with you.
Well, let
So-
me tell you how big that is. Okay,
Mhm.
I'm an engineer.
Mhm.
and I apologize, I shouldn't. But anyway, 1,000 linear feet, a building that was 250 feet long, say square building, 250 feet long and 250 feet deep, 4 sides, that would be 1,000 linear feet of facade. But that would also equate, if it was a single story, would equate to something over 62,000 square feet. We're talking major buildings when we go by the perimeter of 1,000. That's huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's talk about that one, because that's something that we had talked about as well, and kind of went back and forth on, you know, what should be, and you're right, we don't have multifamily buildings that are 62,000 square feet in this, and so let's talk about possibly a different threshold tonight.
Yeah, I would recommend something more, if we're talking about the perimeter, the
Yes, we are.
cumulative distance of the perimeter of the structure, then we got to get less than 1,000 for a staff review.
And especially with a lot of these multifamily sites that may be, you know, 60 feet in width and 100 feet in depth. So you're dealing with a, you know, 6,000 square foot a property. We'll never get to 1,000 square feet or a lineal feet. So, all right, I've got a note to that we address that in discussion tonight.
Okay. Then, again, this also talks about the accessory structures over 12 feet in height and the facade, the 1,000. That's all I've got. Just, I guess, those 2 things.
All right, and I'm going to circle those. Working on my iPad over here on that under non-residential constructions as well for accessory structures and facade or exterior improvements. Okay, I have all those noted for discussion.
And Christy, again, I'll second Andres. Gonna miss you. Totally will. I'm sorry to hear that this is your last meeting, but you've done a wonderful job from my limited time here. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. I've accepted. I'll be the Development Services Director in Hollister, so I'm not going to be that far away.
Yeah, it was a surprise, so we will miss you, definitely.
It was a little quick.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do we have any other commissioners with questions? Okay, we still have an attendee here, Jeff Markham, and Jeff has raised his hand. So Jeff, you are recognized. You're our only attendee from the public.
Thank you. I did have one question in the agenda packet in the table XX on, I guess, page 4 on the PDF for that. There's asterisks on the items. What is that denoting? I couldn't find it in the description.
Okay. I will answer that after close of the public comment.
And he's the only public here, so we will close that and you can answer his question.
Yeah, the asterisks should have been removed. That's something that there's going to be a whole lot of asterisks and footnotes and things like that with just explanation of sort of what these projects are. When this comes back to you, those asterisks will mean something. So, for example, if there's any explanation or any exceptions or anything like that, there'll be a lot of footnotes underneath this table. So, Jeff, thank you. That was an excellent question. And the asterisks for this discussion purpose should have been removed.
Okay, second, which of the review steps are new, if any?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the review steps that are new are, well, most of them. It's more of a clarification. So in my presentation, we were talking about, let's give an example. There is an apartment building that was built in 2004, and they wanted to build a, change a facade or something like that. Well, that is a design. It's already gone through design review, and then there's kind of some limited. There's a limited threshold on when staff can review modifications to projects that have already had design review. If you have an apartment building that was built in 1970, we don't have design review, and so pretty much anything, paint color changes, landscape changes, you want to put a fence up, would have to go through that almost $8,000 process. So a lot of the staff level review is new. It's just clarifying if a project is compliant with the design standards that are going to be outlined in the code, that staff would be able to approve those. There is an appeal process though. So it would be noticed, staff is going to be approving this on this date, and then a member of the public, if they disagree, can always appeal that decision. So there still is a public review process for transparency purposes, but it allows the public to participate even at that staff level. So noticing, we send out, public notices. Hopefully we'll be starting to post the site. So people are aware of design review applications. I hope that answers your question, Mr. Markham.
It does, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised indicating a question.
Well, mine is kind of I guess it's more for clarification, because when we look at page 2, when you cited section 17.56, toward the end of the citation, there's indication of Title 15 for civilians reuse project on former United States military land. So I was kind of Googling Title 15, to get better sense. So, but could you explain to me a little more the relationship between Title 17 and Title 15?
Right. So there's those are for the former Fort Ord. So all of where the Dunes project is and Sea Haven and all of that. Back with the base closure, there was the Fort Ord Reuse Authority had been put together, and then for years there's specific design standards and guidelines that what the city was following for properties that were part of former Fort Ord. Because that Fort Ord Reuse Authority is no longer in existence, the city now, with the lands that we own on former Fort Ord, we have a lot more control over, if you will. We don't have to go through additional review. So that section is going to be modified to update what is current. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Because this is a very old code. 1994 was I believe the last real overhaul of the site and architectural design review. And at that point, the base was still, they were in the process of closing. And then there were some updates later on where, and just in the last couple of years, we've gotten a lot of our authority back.
Oh, I see.
So Commissioner Hurd, do you have any other questions?
No, that's it. Well, thank you, Christy.
You're welcome.
Okay, so now would be the time I suspect that we need to discuss those items on here that were brought up that are questionable, that require further direction for staff. Is that correct, Christy?
Yeah, so what I'll do, and I'm taking my own notes. I'll go ahead and share my screen. I have a second table that we can go over, and we can take some notes on there on what you all would like to see, just so you can kind of see it in real time.
Oops.
Oh, it does this.
While you're pulling that up, can you tell us some examples of non-residential accessory units?
Non-residential accessory structures are, you have, sorry, my grandfather clock is telling me it's 8 o'clock. Accessory buildings for commercial properties. So you would have maybe exterior garages, or some people have storage buildings on commercial properties that they're not necessarily using for maybe a retail space or whatnot. So those are just buildings that are accessory to the main use. They could be attached or they could be detached. Normally they're detached.
Yeah, and actually that I just wanted to.
Yeah.
So about 3 or 4 months ago, Nick brought an item to you guys that actually got me starting to think about this. If you guys recall, it was 190 square foot laundromat to a multifamily structure. And that was the first where, and I was new to the city, still trying to learn the codes. And that was where I was like, okay, we need to have a frank discussion with the commission, because those are the type of projects that in 90% of the cities, that's done as a building permit. There's no public hearing. There's really no environmental impacts. The laundromat was going to look exactly like the rest of the structures. They did all the roof pitches to make it jive with the rest of the development. That's the type of accessory structure where, and overall in this discussion, it's like, we want the planning commission to be hitting up the high level. We want you to spend all your time on, the big general plans, specific plans, objective standards. That's the meaty stuff. 190 square foot laundromat where there's really no impacts. It really is a disservice to the customer to make them come to a public hearing. And anyway, so that's an example of one that you guys recently within the last year worked on.
Right. We had another example of an apartment complex that wanted to add a manager's unit. So it's an additional unit. It was on the interior of the property, but because we didn't have evidence of design review before, they had to go through a public hearing process for a manager's unit that was on existing open space. It met all their open space requirements, but had to go through a public hearing. Those are the types of things that, as Guido said, we feel that we are doing a disservice to the public by making the end to the planning commission a little bit of waste of time, when they could be easily done, reviewed by staff with proper noticing, and notification of the appeal process.
Commissioner Woodson.
Thank you, Commissioner Amadeo. I mean, maybe coming back to this definition of what is an accessory or an ancillary structure. I mean, in places I've been before, it really, it's even more simple than that sometimes. I mean, when I was in Knoxville, it included gazebos and greenhouses also, because they're detached. And so as we start to revise this and we're looking at it, maybe it's easy to think about the kind of big things. Oh, another one is carports. Would count in a lot of places. So maybe it's providing that definition in here. Here are the real examples, as Commissioner Walton, as you're talking about. It's like, okay, we can think of some of the easy ones, as I think Guido, you talked about storage sheds or a workshop, a detached garage are those are the big ones we usually think about. But there are all these other ones that a lot of times people build. And really, it's like, oh, we're just trying to improve our area. I mean, I have a sitting area in the back of my house that it's not it's it's just a small bench area that was created, who knows when, 45 years ago, probably. But it would probably fit the definition of a gazebo, even though gosh knows it's about the size of a love seat.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't need a permit, or but I think that's maybe one of the things to look at as we're doing this, is providing a little bit of the context. And maybe that's what I'm getting down to, is this is an example of, okay, what's the definition of an accessory structure? But maybe as we look at the design standards, just as we did with the ADUs, and this is kind of my second comment, that one of the things we really wanted to do was, when Nick was writing the ADUs, was create a FAQ kind of fact sheet that laid it out in simple terms so that everybody could look at it and say, okay, yeah, here's the regulatory background that's in kind of legalese somewhat, but then here's what it means in English. For
Right.
Spanish, so everybody else can understand it and get past that. And then only because I'm going to step back, because I'm just thinking about this. I don't know if this is appropriate time, but when we talk about, even though ADUs are obviously not regulated here because that's the way the state has set it up, I do think on a consistency side, we had a very long discussion a year and a half ago about heights and what was acceptable for single story and second story and for ADUs. And part of that had to do with it evolved it evolved from the setback issues, because the setbacks were smaller than normal.
Mhm.
And it was like, okay, if we have a second story, and are you looking in your neighbor's house, or is your neighbor looking directly into you? And as we start to think about these things, I wouldn't want to take ADUs out of the discussion. Yes, we take them out of the regulatory permitting, come to the planning commission, that type of discussion. But if we want consistency across our design standards and eventually our objective design standards, then I think we do want to integrate all these together. And the ADU standards, even though they're regulated differently and they're implemented differently, we should kind of try to make sure that all this fits, so that, hey, if we're creating ADUs, yes, we understand that you could do pretty much anything you want, but maybe we can give them guidance that, okay, this is kind of where the city is looking, of what we would like you to please consider. And we talked about that also at the time. But we didn't have any design standards. At the time, I remember we talked about the objective design standard. It's like, okay, we're going to get to it. Well, here we are.
Right.
Anyway, those are just my two comments right now. And Christy, just because I have the opportunity now, and I will probably forget because I'm older now. Again, congratulations on your new position.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, that discussion, you know how the state is, we keep getting new laws coming down and changes with ADUs and heights and all this stuff. So we are really, Alec has been kind of heading this charge, trying to wade through all the new ones, because heights have increased and things like that. So Commissioner Woodson, over this year, especially with the work that's being done on the objective design standards, the Planning Commission is going to have a lot of opportunity to talk about and hear presentations about what's happened with ADU law. The control that we have right now for buildings, structures. Now, an accessory structure is going to be a structure that is meant to shelter something, so something with a roof. And so you're correct. So gazebos, all of that would fall under accessory structures. As I heard you talking, I was thinking about the fact that an accessory structure that's under 120 square feet does not even require a building permit, but the city is requiring some level of design review, even if it doesn't require a building permit. So we might want to talk about that.
And I'd like to add to this discussion. One of the things that happens is that people go through this process. They're the accessory dwelling unit, and it's X number of square feet, no big deal. But they also want to have plumbing and electricity. At that point, it is a big deal because it's easily converted into living space. If you don't have plumbing, especially, you can't convert. And that has its own process of going through the water district and, that kind of thing. So that might help narrow when it needs to come before the planning commission or DRB, and when it can be reviewed solely by staff administerially, if there is any kind of especially water utility, because you want an overhead light in your shed so you can get into it at night and get what you need out of there. But plumbing you don't need in an accessory dwelling unit.
Well, an accessory structure, right?
Structure, yes.
right.
I'm sorry, I
So-
said dwelling unit. That's when it
and-
becomes
and-
something that can be a dwelling unit.
And you're correct. There are people that want to get around this, right? So there are people
Right.
that say, well, I'm going to put a half bath and
I
electricity.
want a
and-
toilet in there just in case.
Right. And
Yeah.
and it's those people on the luckily rare occasions that they go get the permits for that, and then they convert it to a habitable space. They'll add a kitchenette or, a hot plate and a shower. And those get caught, and they get caught usually upon sale of a property, and then they have to go back and correct that. What's interesting is for accessory dwelling units, so a unit that is habitable, there is a deed restriction that goes onto the property for that accessory dwelling unit. One that says that it can't be rented on a short-term basis, so for
Right.
under 30 days, and also that it's, this is the size that has been approved and that type of thing. So that's recorded on the deed. So if somebody comes in and they're selling their property and they have an accessory dwelling unit and they don't have permits for it and there's nothing on the deed, we'll definitely know that thing is not permitted.
Right.
So unfortunately, there are people that do this, and
I
They always
that's why
will.
I'm saying if when they want to build an accessory structure,
Mhm.
it cannot have any kind of water access, plumbing. Once you put water access, now it can be habitable. So now it needs to go through the review process through the planning commission or design review. Do you understand the difference? I'm
I do, and maybe we want to
suggesting?
differentiate. Let's say if somebody is going to they're building a greenhouse and they want to have a wash sink, that would have to have plumbing, versus somebody who wants to build an art studio and they want to put a half bath, a sink and a toilet. Those would be two different types of plumbing issues, where you would have utility sinks. We frequently see that people want to have in for a gardening shed or something like that. So we might want to talk about that.
Yeah, I just think that there has to be a way that we can distinguish between the shed, which you should be able to do easily administerial, and the place that could easily become habitable.
Yeah, and so I just wanted to offer up to the commission, if the commission likes when we come back with because tonight you're not making a decision.
Right.
When we come back, we could just have either a study session or a recommendation about the accessory structure kind of provisions, just so you guys can all get educated and give us some additional thoughts. So.
Right. And
Yeah.
the other part is also Commissioner St. John had brought up that the linear.
Mhm.
Yeah, we should talk about the math there.
Yeah.
We can probably do a better job of articulating that. I mean, we were just trying to articulate, on a 2,000 square foot house, if you're basically touching half of the facade, right? I think, and I'm sorry, not a house, because a house is
These are all multifamily.
I apologize, because here other cities are I'm getting three different city codes mixed up. Sorry. If you have a 2,000 square foot multifamily, if you're touching, say, more than half of it, right, that seems to be like a major change. We can work out
Rather than do linear feet, doing it by percentage of the square footage of the facade.
right. So some cities I've said, if you do 50% change of the floor area, 50% of the gross floor area, 50% of, I mean, it all is how we slice and dice it. So, and that's why we're here before you guys tonight, to get a temperature gauge for, are we on the right track? Commissioner St. John gave us good feedback. We'll go back and retool those, the perimeter square footage number. And so that's really the goal for tonight, is to kind of, hey, are we on the right track? Yes or no? And yeah, kind of get some initial feedback. So.
And then I was concerned about the landscaping, and I know we're talking multifamily. Sometimes landscaping is as simple as we have these beautiful decorative plants out front that bloom 50% of the year, but they're very water intensive. All we want to do is replace them with something more drought tolerant. They're not ripping out the entire landscaping. There, to me, that's plant replacement as opposed to something more major. So I think that needs to be addressed as to when that's going to require, if the entire area is being re-landscaping, a whole new landscaping plan, that's one thing. But if it's just replacing some plants with drought tolerant.
And that's the great feedback we want to hear from the commission, because you're bringing up a good point that, you know, right now it's raining cats and dogs, but normally we're in a drought and we want to encourage people to plant drought resistant plants.
Yes.
We don't want to discourage that, right? So where is that threshold that the commission feels comfortable delegating that to staff? Like you're saying, is it a threshold? Is it a percentage? You know, or is it a percentage? But if you're doing drought tolerant that the city supports, then that's a staff level, right? So, but that's the great feedback we're looking for tonight. So
Okay, so what I'm hearing with that is, and the other thing that I sort of heard with that is, should there even be a requirement for any type of design review if you're replacing replacing existing plant material with more drought tolerant?
With more drought tolerant.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got that.
Maybe it just gets submitted to staff and you get the stamp of okay, and there isn't really a huge review because the plant list says drought tolerant plants and you're doing a bed or 2 beds or whatever. So
okay. All right. That makes sense.
Glenn Woodson has a question or comment.
So I think another one, and I don't know how to deal with this one, but it was something I've seen. My neighbors ran into it. I ran into it a little slightly when I first moved here. There's also, because you triggered my mind with the 120. And the running joke, a friend of mine who worked over at Salinas Sheds off of 1 and outside of Salinas. And so they have a specific design over there that is a 120-foot garage shed that they then can put 2 of them back to back, and they can put a connector, basically a modular connector between the 2, like an accordion, and it's fine. And then if somebody actually says something code-wise, they can just come in and knock out that accordion section and separate them all into 2. And I was like, oh, I always remember that. But so number one, but joke about it. But then the second thing really goes to existing structures and what you're talking about, Commissioner Amadeo, on it's really renovation is kind of the bigger term as that I'm thinking about. In your case, you're talking landscaping. In the case of my neighbors, in case of mine, it was when we moved in, I had a storage area in the back that was about 190 to 110 square feet. It wasn't 120. It definitely wasn't built to whatever code of 120 because it was built probably 40 years ago. But it needed new siding. The framing was good, but it needed new siding. And so from a maintenance perspective, I was like, okay, is this and if it was over 120 feet, again, these are some of the things to think about. If you're renovating and we're trying to fix up the properties in our community, and we have a lot of these things that were brought into the city prior to the city incorporating, and now they're getting to a point where they're getting aged wise, where they need some type of renovation. They need a new roof. They need some type of siding. They don't necessarily want to tear them down, but they don't necessarily want to, again, come to the design review. They don't want to come to the board. It's what is the administrative solution to kind of, because at the time, the very first action I got from the planning office was Oh, well, you'll have to go before the planning commission and have that approved, Mike, to just replace the outer, like 5 sheets of plywood that are on the outside of this small storage shed that isn't even 120 feet.
Right.
And
And
it,
yes,
It
that
doesn't-
is a prime example of why these thresholds need to be
right.
done. Mhm.
Anyway, thanks.
Yeah, you're muted, Guido.
And that's a great example. When I started with the city a year ago, Dan, our chief building official, he really succinctly verbalized what I'd been thinking for years. And his whole thing is, if I make the building permit process smooth and easy, then people will want to come in and work with us. If I make it cumbersome and
Expensive.
they're expensive and you have to go through a bunch of hoops, then guess what? People are just going to do stuff illegally. I'm sorry, that's not unpermitted.
Unpermitted.
And then we have to chase our tail with code enforcement, right? So yeah, so that you and Cops Lake, Commissioner Woodson, kind of where we're trying to go. Where is that happy medium where the city planning commission council has jurisdiction, and where we can maybe help at staff level and we all get what we want, right?
So Commissioner Amadeo, with I was just thinking about what you said with accessory structures with plumbing or not. One thing that we have found is it's easier for people, and it's the development standards are much more relaxed, to actually go ahead and get an accessory dwelling unit approved rather than as opposed to a non-habitable accessory structure. It is absolutely amazing. So if somebody wants to come in and do an accessory structure non-habitable on their site, it contributes to lot coverage. All of that, it has to meet all the setbacks. It's got to do all that. If you come in with an accessory dwelling unit, you have 4-foot rear and side setbacks. We have to allow you a minimum of 800 square foot ADU. If you don't have enough room in your side yard or your rear yard to do that, we may have to allow you to do it in your front yard. So it's actually, the state laws made it easier for people to do the habitable, to
Right.
ADUs, and it's just a simple deed restriction. So it's so backward, but it actually doesn't make a lot of sense right now for people to just build an accessory structure.
Right.
Yeah.
Commissioner St. John.
Yeah, let me make a recommendation concerning the accessory structures over 12 feet, that we not even make a separate case out of something that's over 12 feet or under 12 feet or 16 feet or whatever, because there should be another place that governs building heights, whether it's an accessory or a primary building or a ADU, that the height would already be covered somewhere. And so I don't see the need for a separate line item on the review matrix or tables. Christy, do you?
So let me go back and clarify a little bit. I'll put it into context. The reason accessory structures are called out in this is because accessory structures are allowed to be in rear yard setbacks. They have their own setback requirements, and in most cases it's 1 foot from the side and rear property lines, whereas your main building may have a 20-foot setback. So you got a main building with a 20-foot rear yard setback, but if you have an accessory building, not for habitation purposes, you can build all the way up to 1 foot within 1 foot. I believe that this height issue came up where it's like, okay, you can have an 8 foot and you could have a 6 foot fence, no one's going to see it, but your neighbor's never going to see it. Once you start to get up above, and this is arbitrary, but it makes sense, 12 feet, you could be having impacts to your neighbor. That's where I believe the 12 feet came from in the existing code. But I just wanted everybody to keep in mind that those accessory structures can be pretty much right at property line. in your rear and side yard. So that's why they were addressed separately.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Did I answer that, or I may have misinterpreted what you were saying, Commissioner?
I still don't understand why it takes a separate line item on the matrix. We talked about the accessory structures less than 500 square feet and greater than 500 square feet. But we could have an accessory, and if it's greater than 500 square feet, it goes to the commission.
Mhm.
If it's less than 500 square feet, it's a staff and director level review. But the 12 feet is the outlier, the special case. If it's over 12 feet, then hey, it goes to the lowest level review. It just
I
seems
see.
like we're making a special case for something that shouldn't be a special case.
I see what you're talking about. So that does need to be refined. We'll have to talk about that on, now I understand what you're talking about. So accessory structures over 12 feet in height, we are not specifying whether or not it's 500 square feet or 2,000 square feet in that. So maybe we need to, and also.
But of course,
Okay.
that would trump it. If it was over 500 square feet, then that would probably define which level of review it is, rather than that it was 12 foot 6 inches or 13 foot high.
Mhm. I see.
But if you've got the 12 feet as a special case, because there it is, it's right up there with anything else on the matrix. And yet it's the lowest level. There's a lot of things that would be a lower level review that aren't even show up,
Mhm.
because it's only hitting the major things.
Right.
So I just don't understand why the 12 feet gets a prominent place on the review matrix.
Audra, I'm going to recognize you in just a moment, but if I can add to this discussion, one of the things that I've seen happen in Marina with accessory structures that are tall, over 12 feet, they're often basically people have built them as garages, and sometimes they're 20 feet because they're garaging their motorhome.
Mhm.
And that has a huge impact on the people that live around them. So I think that within that discussion, we have to look at what the intended use is as well.
Oh,
So
okay.
maybe it's not just the height, but the intended use. Okay, Audra, go ahead. Unless you've got something else to add, Commissioner St. John.
No, but I mean, that's a good point. And if it's a 20 feet or 30 feet high, then maybe there's other things that ought to bump it up to the Planning Commission for review or approval.
Okay.
Instead of the lowest level review,
Right.
because 100 feet is over 12 feet.
Exactly. 20 feet is over. and
20
has a-
feet is over, and that's a very common
Exactly.
metal building that you can buy.
Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
so Audra, excuse me, Commissioner Walton, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I enjoy, I get a lot from Commissioner St. John's questions. Thank you for asking them. I have a clarifying question for Christy and maybe Guido. And I think I just don't understand with respect to the accessory units. When we're saying is it for commercial or residential use, these accessory units, or both? And then the other part of my clarifying question is with respect to accessory dwelling units. Did I understand you correctly? In commercial zones, people are allowed to place an accessory dwelling unit on their commercial property and escape the accessory structure from parameters, if you will.
So accessory dwelling units apply to single-family properties and existing multifamily properties.
Thank you.
Right. So on a commercial site, no. So what we're talking about with accessory structures in this matrix are going to be those that don't fall under ADU or accessory dwelling units. And they're not for habitation.
And they're located in commercial zones, residential zones, or both?
Any zone.
Any zone.
So yeah,
Industrial.
so in general, it would be a building that is a building or a covered structure that is incidental to the main use of the structure or of the site. So you have a main, even in an industrial site, you have a main building where you've got maybe production happening, and then they have storage sheds outside. The storage sheds are going to be your accessory buildings.
Thank you so much.
I would like to ask the commissioners, it was suggested that the next time this comes back, that perhaps it be a study session as opposed to a decision-making session. And I would like to hear from the commissioners which they would prefer. Do you want a study session, more discussion on our part based on what comes back to us? Or do you want to be making a decision at the next meeting? Because that will determine how staff approaches this.
And if I could add to that very quickly, that might influence your decision on this.
Absolutely.
The other portion of right now, this is just the table that we're talking about in the design review thresholds. But as part of that, there's also the ordinance cleanup. Right now, there's no clear findings in the ordinance on when staff or commission is going to be approving. There's nothing that talks about conditions of approval. There's a whole lot of things that are not included in the ordinance that staff would be presenting to the Planning Commission that may benefit from being inclusion in a study session if you so choose to do that.
So if we can just go one by one, Audra, which do you think works better? Commissioner Herr, Commissioner St. John, Commissioner Woodson, just so that staff can hear what the preference is of the commission. And it may be that they want the study session, and it may be they want to move more strongly ahead. I don't know, but I felt like the commission should have input on that. So Audra.
Thank you. So a couple of questions. So that would take us from a 2-part to a 3-part process if we do a study session and then we come back for a decision.
Right.
And then we're missing 2 commissioners, a new one, and Commissioner Rana this evening.
Yes.
So would it be, I think, for me, I think I would go with a study session and then a decision, because mostly so that we can have more voices and ears and thoughts included in that, and then a decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Herr.
Oh, well, I'm the same, I think the same way as Commissioner Walton. I'd like to have study sessions so that, we are better educated before making any kind of decisions.
Okay, Commissioner Woodson.
I would concur with both of them and go with the study.
Okay, and Commissioner St. John.
Yep, I concur with the group. Study sounds in order for the next session.
That's great. I'm glad that we're all in concurrence. I did want to make sure that worked out. Sometimes there is an anxiousness to get through something and move on to something grander, bigger, whatever. This is really important. So I'm really glad to see that the commission recognizes its value to the public, to our staff, and to us as a commission. So this is really good. So did you feel like you got enough feedback, staff? All right.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much. And I thought this was kind of a fun thing for us to finally be able to talk about. And like I said, I find it's exciting for me that this is my last presentation to you all. And thank you all so much for a really wonderful past 6 years. I've really enjoyed working with the Planning Commission. always so thoughtful, and you all work so well together. And so I will miss this commission, but thank you all very much.
Don't you get choked up on us.
I'm not going to get choked up.
Well, you'd have us all streaming tears if you did. So.
I'll do poetry.
Yeah,
We will just
we're
come up the
definitely
Hollister
going to-
public comment period.
Oh, you should. That'd be fun.
And then we'll have
Okay.
all sorts of things to say to like throw a wrench into their system.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sure they'd
so-
appreciate that.
So we're going to move.
Christy, do you live local? If you live in this area, we may bump into you.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'll be around. I live in Ferndale, which
Oh,
is
I
why
see.
I'm home right now, because I didn't want to get stuck on the other side of the Salinas River. We'll see what happens tomorrow, because it's my last day and I'd like to come into the office. But no, Ferndale. So I'm central and I'll be around.
You know,
I go to
come
Marina
to
a lot.
meeting once in a while.
Oh, I will. I'll come bug y'all.
There you go. Okay, so we're going to move on. We have 2 action items. The first one is election of the chair and vice chair for the 2023 calendar year. So the nominations are open for chair and vice chair. And yes, it's up to you guys who you would like to lead you over the next year.
Well, I'd like to make a nomination for Nancy Amadeo to be the chair, continue on at least for the next year. You've done such an excellent job this year, and we're learning a lot.
You guys are wonderful to work with, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And I second.
Okay, so we'll take this one first and then we do vice chair. So all in favor of myself as the chair for the upcoming year, we've had a motion and a second. That motion was made by Commissioner St. John and the second by Commissioner Hurst. So all in favor, please. Oh, roll call vote. I forgot. I was trying to rush through this so we could get to vice chair.
Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. And I'm sorry I rushed through it. It's kind of embarrassing to ask for a vote on yourself. Okay, so for vice chair, we need a nomination for vice chair. Come on, somebody can do it.
So all right, fine. That's like
There-
nominating yourself. I would nominate. Can I nominate myself?
Absolutely.
I would be interested in doing that.
Okay, so we have a nomination
Yeah, I'll do
for,
a second. Yes.
and there we go. And we have a second. So the nomination was from Commissioner Woodson for Commissioner Woodson, seconded by Commissioner St. John. So can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations, Commissioner Woodson, on your selection for vice chair. Next, we appoint a member from the Planning Commission
Yeah,
to the tree committee.
Yeah, I should have given a staff report, but I kind of ran out of time. So as I alluded to, so in August, we went to council and we said, hey, what do you want us to do with the tree committee and the other committees? They directed us to restart the tree committee. Chair Amadeo and vice chair at the time, McCarthy, and I interviewed people. And that's the second item. To apparently the way they wrote the Muni Code here, the commission makes an annual recommendation for the tree committee. So that's the second part. And
Right.
then the other part of this is we have to have one commissioner who will be a part of the tree committee, and then one who will agree to be an alternate if the one PC member can't make it. So
And
that,
do we have a date when the tree committee date in the month or quarterly or semi-annually?
they meet quarterly on Wednesdays. With a lot of the new housing bills, I'm trying to get us to meet on the same night. So we're not taking up too many nights away from the commissioners.
I think that's a good
So I'll
idea.
be polling the new tree committee. February 7th, I'm gonna be going to council based on the recommendations tonight. And then I have to do training with this new committee to talk to them about all the new housing bills and objective standards and how we have to streamline things. So you wouldn't be having to make a commitment probably until March. And then the Muni Code's written that the tree committee only meets basically quarterly.
Right.
So yeah, it's not that much of a commitment.
They
so.
used to meet, I'm not sure when it changed, but they used to meet monthly. And we had a lot of major development projects. And so we met monthly. And then there was some sort of a conflict between planning staff and tree committee members about exactly what their roles and responsibilities were. And there was even an effort to get rid of the tree committee that was stymied. When you have smart people who know about trees, it's really important to have them around. But that's when it changed to being a quarterly meeting. And I would like to suggest that when the tree committee is meeting again, that based on the kinds of projects, the number of times that there might have to be review, that our staff look at coming back to having them meet with the planning commission at the same time, so we don't have that conflict, and reviewing trees at the same time the planning commission is reviewing the project. So that's a recommendation from me, but I would like to invite the planning commissioners to select one among their members to be the member of the tree committee from the planning commission, and then someone who is willing to be the alternate.
Well, I have a question. We don't have a full house today, so does the selection be made today? Because
I think that would be something that staff needs to answer because they know what's coming down the pike.
Well, I've already written my February staff report. We can push it off. Well, actually, no, the second February meeting, I'm taking my kids at Disney. I'm not at the second council meeting in February. Ideally, if we go today, because the way I've written 95% of my staff report, but I'm just trying to plug in who are the two PC members. And then I feel like if I don't go, we might lose those people who applied.
Right.
I might get pressure from council members of the community. Hey, I thought you said you were going to start the tree committee. So
right. They are very anxious for the tree committee to be active again. So I agree with staff that we should probably move forward tonight. If after appointed to the committee, you discover that you can't meet those obligations and we have new commissioners or a new commissioner, then certainly someone can resign and someone else can be put in that position. But it would be nice to have those two positions filled this evening.
And then to help out Commissioner Her, I'm just thinking out loud. So today's January 12th. February 7th is the council meeting. So, honestly, I've written 95% of the staff report. So I guess it really is up to, I guess if we push it off just to the very next meeting, that's fine. The only problem is at the next meeting, Commissioner St. John and Commissioner Her have to recuse themselves from the Sea Haven discussion. So, and that's fine. You guys can just shut off your video and come back. So it depends on where we put it in the agenda. So yeah, I guess we could push it off 2 more weeks. I'm sorry. So.
Okay. So, Commissioner St. John, your hand is raised.
Yeah. Just an overview question directed to all of the planning commissioners. Do we have a planning commissioner who has some type of background or knowledge that would be useful for the tree committee, or a planning commissioner that would just love to be go to the tree committee members and participate? Do we have a volunteer?
Yeah. And that's the question. Are you passionate about trees and plants, mostly trees? And would be
So who's not
interested in
here?
serving? I'm sorry, Commissioner Woodson.
Who's not here? Just kidding.
Commissioner
come-
Rana is not here.
Guido got it.
Yeah, and Brian McCarthy's position is, yeah.
Yeah.
He's
No, I'm just
now
joking.
a
that-
council member, so he's not available anymore to us.
Yeah.
So we are waiting for a new appointee, which probably I would imagine interviews will be happening in January. And so we won't see the new commissioner until February.
Yeah. So my pitch too, I sound like there's a little bit of trepidation. So once again, for now, it's a quarterly meeting. And then my pitch to the commissioner, especially for the younger commissioners. So in my planning career, the tree issues have actually been some of the more challenging and interesting, and you can use both words.
Yeah.
Trees can get very contentious. So you end up learning a lot about trees. You learn a lot about the community. Trees are a very precious commodity. People have very strong opinions one way or the other. So I've actually learned quite a bit about trees in my 19-year planning career. So it can be a kind of interesting opportunity. So, and once again, if scheduling is an issue, once the tree committee is formed, we can work with the planning commission and the tree committee to say, hey, planning commission starts at 6:30. Why don't we meet at 5:30 on the same night, or whatever works for the group. So I don't want to overcommit you guys. So that's my pitch to you guys.
And then the other thing, just to reassure the commissioners that the people that have been recommended by the committee are all well qualified, very knowledgeable about trees. The interviews were really, I'm gonna use an unusual word in an interview, spectacular. I was very, very impressed with the knowledge that these people possess. So you would be in good company, and as Guido said, you would learn a lot and could make a great contribution. And I still don't see any hands going up saying, pick me, pick me. Audra.
I'm with Commissioner Her on perhaps giving Commissioner Rana an opportunity, and I'm available to be an alternate. I was going to ask about the time commitment with respect to, so they're meeting for decision items. Just, I guess, with respect to clarifying questions, what exactly is it that the tree committee would be doing? I know we got a lot of questions about trees, and I really just I'm sad that I'm through. Mike Owen is we leaned on him heavily, yeah, for his wide breadth of knowledge on trees. So having this committee come back, I feel like a great relief. And so I guess what I'm asking, do they meet twice or just the once for the like we do for the meeting? They don't have a separate discussion and then come for the public.
So according to the current schedule, which, like I said, we can change, it's the second Wednesday of every month in January, April, June, and October. So it's basically a quarterly meeting on the second Wednesday. To answer your question, it is for tree removal permits that are not part of an original landscape plan. Those just get swapped in and out. So you guys have actually, because we didn't have a tree committee last year, you guys actually reviewed. So there was one for the water district that Nick brought, and
Couple for Sea Haven.
yeah, that one. And then Nick brought there was a subdivision when I first started last January. They wanted to remove 3 or 4. So
The ones over by the veterans.
yeah, exactly. I forgot. Yeah. So, yeah, you guys actually already had some.
We had a pretty good
And then
discussion on the dunes trees also.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's a little
7
different.
trees that got ripped down without a permit.
Yeah, that was, yeah. Oh, yeah, good point. And then I guess my final pitch to you guys is kind of the ordinance is written that we actually have to have participation. So if you guys want to continue it for another meeting, that's fine. But at the end of next meeting, I kind of need to push you guys to say, okay, I used to be in the Army. If no one volunteers, then you get volunteered. Somebody's going to get picked, right? So yeah, so whatever the commission wants to do, we can definitely push it off one more meeting. To have
Or we
Rob-
can just, or we
yeah.
can just agree that Commissioner Rana is going to be the presumptive selectee. And then
Wait,
she has the right of,
But
and
before
then
we
she has
do
the right
that,
of denial at the next meeting.
before we do
Voluntold.
that, Commissioner St. John has had his hand raised for quite some time. Maybe he's going to volunteer. Go ahead, Commissioner St. John.
Yes, Chair Amadeo, let me volunteer for the position of member of the tree committee.
Thank
subcommittee.
you. And Audra, do you want to be the alternate? Hallelujah. We have 2 volunteers. And
Yay.
so do we need to vote on this?
I mean,
Make it official?
yeah, I mean, it's more of a,
Raise your hand if you agree.
yeah, I mean, you can make a motion or not. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's fine.
Or you
Okay.
can, or
How about if we make a motion to accept the volunteers for the tree committee for
Perfect.
both the primary and the alternate?
Sounds good.
Okay,
I second that.
all right. So can we have a roll call vote?
Sure. Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
yes,
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And thank you and thank you very much for volunteering, both of you. That I feel like we had a huge success. Okay, so we move on to considering the 4 recommended individuals to sit on the tree committee.
Yep.
And just a brief question, something we didn't do. Normally with our commissions that we have and our committees, we have 2 that serve for 2 years when you're starting these and 2 that sit for 1 year and then can reapply for a 2-year. Or are these all just 1-year appointments?
I believe, and what Christy and I looked in the code, I thought tree committee stuff is for 1 year.
1 year. Okay. 'Cause
But I will
it could have changed, and that's why I was asking. So if it's only 1 year, it's only 1 year.
But honestly, Chair Amadeo, I will double check that because we are reforming the committee. So I'll have to check with Shep about how did that all play out in terms of the 4 and all that other stuff. So.
Okay, so, but in the meantime, we can at least have a vote to approve the 4 committee members to the tree committee so that they can start meeting and that decision can be made later. Okay, so can I get a motion to approve Greg Simmons, Jeff Markham, Judith Elvira, and Jackie Gardner for the tree committee?
So I nominate, am I repeating the names?
Yes, you need to repeat the names.
Okay, I nominate Greg Simmons, Jeff Markham, Judith Elvira, Jackie Gardner for the trees, for the subcommittee.
Okay, and do I have a second?
I second.
I'll second.
Okay, Audra Walton seconded first. So we have a motion by Commissioner Herr, a second by Commissioner Walton. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Chair Amadeo,
Yes.
Commissioner St. John,
Yes,
Commissioner Walton,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodson,
Yes.
Commissioner Herr.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good, thank you. And then next is staff updates. And Guido, I had talked to you about the joint meeting.
Yeah, so one of the more exciting things we get to work on as planners is general plan updates, because it kind of lays the groundwork for how the city is going to develop the next 20, 25 years. And so January 25th, that is I believe that's a Wednesday, we are having a joint meeting with the Planning Commission and the City Council. And we're going to have our kickoff meeting for the general plan. So please mark that on your calendars. I will be sending out a calendar invite for that, just to place it on your calendar, but you'll probably get something from Shep, the city clerk.
Will that be in person or online?
It will be online, and that actually brings me to my next point. In February,
At what time? Allison sent out that email as well, and I don't think time was set.
Allison, I thought somehow we landed on 7, right?
Yeah,
I thought it was 6 o'clock.
usually they're at 6. The mayor had a conflict that night. I don't know if the starting time has been decided yet, but it would be somewhere 6 or possibly 7.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so like I said, you guys are all on the planning commission at a really awesome time. We have a good staff, and we're doing a lot of great projects, and the general plan is probably the biggest thing you guys will work on, that literally 10 years after you leave the commission will have a direct impact on your community. So you definitely come to the meeting. And there's going to be a general plan subcommittee. There's going to be charrettes. There's going to be survey. There's a lot of different bites at the apple, but it all gets kicked off January 25th. Yeah, and I'll make a reminder to myself just to email the group. So.
And just to let the commission know, unfortunately, my daughter's work schedule has me with my 4-year-old granddaughter till 8:30, 8:45 that night. So I will be muted most of the time. I am presuming that the mayor will handle the commission. But if not, because in the past he has asked the chair, I'm going to ask Commissioner Woodson as the new vice chair, if he would handle that on my behalf. I'm still going to participate, but I have to be muted most of the time. It doesn't make me a very effective leader. So Commissioner Woodson, if you wouldn't mind doing that as our new vice chair.
I will. Now I have a reason to tell my Cub Scout pack leaders have to lead themselves that.
There you go.
Very good. And Karen, you have had your hand up for a very long time.
Yes, I just had one thing that I wanted to bring up for yourself and for Commissioner St. John in regards to the Planning Commission Academy that's in March in LA. I did send out a couple emails to let you guys know that I signed you guys up for it. And if you guys need any help with your flights or your hotel or booking a car, please do let me know as soon as possible. I did help Commissioner Her with her flights, hotel, and car, and she's all set up for that. You're welcome. So if you do need assistance with that, I can do that, and hopefully sooner than later, so we can make sure you get your flights and hotels.
If you can make arrangements for me as well, I'll let you know right now. I do need help with that.
Okay, yeah, if you want to send me any preferences you have as far as times, that would be very helpful too. If you're going to fly like out of San Jose or Monterey. So
I prefer to fly out of Monterey, but it depends upon whether or not I can get close to, if I can fly in without having to be rerouted, because I'm going to another conference this month. And in order to fly out of Monterey, it would take 9.5 hours to get to Anaheim.
Yeah, your best bet is to fly out of San Jose, and then you go into John Wayne Airport, which is right next to where the Academy will be, and that's what Commissioner Her is doing as well.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. And same for you, Commissioner St. John. If you need any assistance, please let me know.
Yeah, please, Karen. I'll take all the assistance you can give.
Okay, all right. I will get back to you on either Tuesday or Wednesday when I'm back in the office.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, we haven't really formally introduced Karen. Karen's been with us now for 6-7 months. Just so you know, I think Karen is the most organized person I've ever worked with. She only works 20 hours a week. She gets more done in 20 than most people do in 40. So we're very fortunate to have her. So
Thank you.
I want to introduce her to the commission. So thank you. And she's organizing a bunch of stuff for you guys. So thank
So
you.
is she our admin?
She is the admin assistant for CDD. So yeah.
Okay, great. And Allison, you had your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to put a big shout out to Commissioners Walton, Her, and St. John, who attended the Cypress Knolls workshop this past weekend. It was really great. We had about 40 or so participants. It was great. I actually had fun. And I think the hands-on activities that the consultants prepared were really popular with the participants. So I thought it went really well. We had, a lot of good feedback. And so I just wanted to put that out there just as a little update.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And then in March, the city manager is asking for another joint meeting of the Planning Commission and City Council to kick off, or I guess we're like the third or fourth time kicking off the Cypress Knolls project. So we'll get those dates out to you later. But yeah.
And if you can get them out like 6 weeks in advance, because that's how much time I need to give my daughter.
March 28th.
March 28th. Okay. Thank you. I will put it in my calendar. Okay. Any other comments from commissioners?
A quick just reminder, on the 17th, we're having the Martin Luther King statue groundbreaking. I'm trying to find the flyer. If somebody knows off the top of the head.
On the 16th?
On this, is the 7th?
It's this Monday.
It's
Is this Monday? The 16th. Did I say the 17th?
Yes.
I work too much. This the 16th at the library.
And hopefully it's not raining.
And hopefully it's not raining and we're not on the island still.
Yeah.
Exactly. And Commissioner Woodson. I'm going to have to get used to calling you vice chair.
It's going to be an interesting one to get used to myself. So we did the tree commission, design committee.
Design review board, we have not been instructed to bring it back at this point. It's being evaluated and staff is supposed to make a recommendation to the city council in the future. So that's why.
I just was more interested in kind of where that stood. We knew there was a big push on the tree side of it, and this hadn't really come up yet. But given that we're starting to move into all these review of the design standards and objective design standards, and I would hope that by this summer that we would be able to have that back online also.
Yeah. We'll have to kind of wait and see in terms of council direction, but yeah. And actually one last thing for the, so February 28th, the emergency COVID restrictions are going away, the ones signed by the governor during COVID. So in March, we need to go back to in-person meetings. So I'm just giving the commission a heads up so that would be, that first meeting would be March 9th.
And will it be in the council chambers? And I say that holding my breath because of the amount of mold in the rugs.
Yeah, those rugs are from when I was a kid in the 70s.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yes, that's where we will meet. So yeah, there is going to be some remodeling. Matt, the assistant city manager, is kind of running point on that.
Okay.
So
hopefully at least the moldy rugs will be gone.
Maybe, we'll see. I I will be pushing out to the commission. There are some limited exceptions. Doing virtual. I just read the memo from the city attorney a couple days ago. You can go, individual commissioners can be virtual for a couple times throughout the year, but the intent is to bring the commission back to in person. So just giving the commission a heads up.
For me, it's definitely not about COVID or the flu or any of that. It's about a bad building.
Yeah.
And I wish there was some exception for having a bad building.
Yeah. So
And
just
Yeah,
make
it
sure-
would be great if they, if there's a cleanup before.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
in-person meeting starts.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had a friend who almost stopped breathing as a result of an asthma attack that she had in there that was due to the molds. So
Okay.
it really is very concerning. If there hadn't been a police officer right there, she probably would have stopped breathing before we could get her outside.
Yeah. So
A
I
very
would,
bad building.
I would encourage you as commissioners, you are residents of the city. Maybe wait a couple more weeks till the council announces it. And then if you want to talk to your council members or me or the city manager and say, hey, I understand we have to go back. Can you guys make sure you clean up the building or whatever? Just that's your.
I think the real solution is let's go back to what we discussed 2 months ago, which is to take one of the 3-story gazebo dunes in phase 3.
Oh, the gazebo. I don't even know which one is that.
But remember, they had the 3-story ones with the garden area on top that they're putting in.
Yes.
That would be.
Maybe we can move into Spring Hill Suites for our for our meetings for a while. They have lovely community rooms.
Yeah, well, as long as it's a publicly accessible building. then-
Exactly. I do have a question for staff on staff updates at the next meeting if possible. I'm very curious about the space in front of the Hampton Inn Suites. I thought that whole corner belonged to them, but they didn't develop parking. They've taken down all the barriers. They didn't develop parking along the east side of the building as it fronts on Reservation Road. And it's a large space. And I'm wondering if in fact that doesn't belong to the Hampton Inn, that it is a lot for development there. And if staff can provide some information. that would
Sure.
be-
At the next meeting, I'll follow up on that.
Thank you. And if there's any other projects that have been kind of sitting on hold, like the one across from the post office next door to the transit bus facility, that was a multi-story, 2 buildings, and hasn't gotten, it was approved when I was on the council, so that was over 4 years ago. What is
should-
happening
Shoot
with
me
that
the
project?
address. I can look it up. Yeah, send me the address. I'll be glad to look it up.
Okay, thank you. And if the other commissioners have questions regarding very specific projects, they should do the same so that we can get updates on those projects.
Yeah, well,
Thank
yes,
you.
send me the address.
Thank you very much.
No
Um,
problem. And so, yeah, so guys, honestly, you're on the commission at a great time. General plan, objective zoning standards. I've been here a year, and now after a year, I'm trying to find ways to help out the commission, the council, and our customers. So you're going to be seeing some kind of process improvement stuff the next year that'll hopefully streamline things for our customers and the community. And so I'm really excited to work with this commission for the next year. So.
Any other comments?
This is a minor thing. I don't think you can say it, but in the staff report, in the agenda, on the public hearings, it says, provide up to 4 minutes of public testimony. So in the letter, it says 4, but in parentheses, in Arabic numeral, it says 3. So just pointing out minor.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
It got changed to 3.
And
The city council just changed their rules to have 3 minutes.
Right.
So let me make a note to Karen to change that on the agenda. So
yeah, so it happens 2 times on that page. And sorry, I was an editor before, so those things.
Oh, that's what this is.
And
perfect. Yeah.
my eyes.
Quite frankly, we've not timed it since we were in the council chambers. And the council does, their deputy city clerk, she runs a timer on the screen, but we don't do that with the planning commission. And I don't think I've ever seen where there was an issue where it seemed like a member of the public just went on and on and on and on.
Yeah, but
But it would be appropriate to have some sort of ability to provide a time for the public.
yeah, and we want to be consistent with council.
We
So
want to be consistent, exactly.
Commissioner Her, we will definitely fix that. So I have that in my notes. So
Very good.
all right, y'all.
Well, I think that we are done, and so therefore we are adjourned.
Great. See you guys in
Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Good
thank
night,
you.
everyone.
Have a good
Good night,
evening.
everyone.
Have a good night, stay dry.
Yeah.
Yes, no swimming allowed.
Oh, no. Happy New Year,
Stay
everyone.
safe in the next meeting.